This live presentation was produced in Ashland, Oregon by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. RVML relies on the support of our volunteers, members, and donors to organize and present these programs. For more information about this presentation, or to borrow, download, or purchase other recordings from our catalog, please visit our website at rvml.org.
It's very challenging to learn the real from the unreal or the truth from the untrue. Dominant personalities can say the most profoundly outrageous things and get a following. You know, it's just like there's so many of us and there's so much stuff now that the net's out there. So because I've been into prophecy on a global level and where we're going in the end of this world age, I've been into it most of my life. I feel like I do have a big picture, and for myself, I've been able to sort of join up the points of contact between symbols and archetypes and mythology that gives us a place to stand and some kind of bearings, so we know that here, here, and here, there's something true and real that we can always regard as like foundation stones. So that's really what the slideshow is about. But I join it together with my narrative, so hopefully it flows. It's not your usual left brain linear show. It's more in the nature of collage. There's off-the-wall things. There's art as well as, you know, scientific diagrams and all of that. So the first carousel is really about Egyptian stuff, the Great Pyramid, giving you a sense of where all that is going in terms of Egyptian prophecy, if there really is such a thing. You can construe a prophecy when you see all of the data and interpret it, then you know that there's something solid that the ancients said that we are living through and experiencing today. So that ends the first slide, part one. So the second carousel is more to do with the Egyptian Mayan connection, interesting things that are bringing us currently toward the year 2012 at the end of the cycle. So hopefully it will all come out at the end of the wash and you will feel like you know more than when you came in. I don't want you to think of it as data. I'd like you to think of it as points of wisdom and clarity. And so what I've got on the menu is Hopi Prophecy, Mayan connections, chaos theory, cosmology, eschatology, consciousness, transformation, myths of power and transformation, astrophysics and earth science, diddle-dee-dee, initiatory thresholds and opportunities, but not necessarily in that order, okay? So I'll be glad to get the lights out. I'm always challenged in lights. So who's going to, oh, I'm going to do it apparently, yes, right. Where's my clicker? My remote. Ah, the equipment. Yes, thank you. So I'd like to start by not really ultimately defining what an archetype is. You know it when you see it. A symbol or a myth can be archetypal. Generally speaking, an archetype is something that informs our consciousness. It's like a seed. You see it, and then later on you understand it. And it's something that's generally a pattern of meaning that is in nature, it's in the celestial realm. It's to do with the way the human mind works. These patterns are all the same. And so those are very much, once you understand how archetypes work, it's a great guideline. So I want to give you an example. This is not fiction, this is fact. I'll have to wait till the card comes up before I give it to you. This is giving you a sense of the initiatory journey in Egypt. Sorry. In all the world, I believe there's nowhere like Egypt for the profundity of its sacred science and its ancient wisdom. So this is one of the most ancient sites, Abydos. And this is It's a replica. It's a Japanese artist's improvement on an ancient inscription, which is really the rising of the god out of the primordial abyss. He's got the boat in which the sun god travels. And it's going to take me a while to kind of get used to being ambidextrous. So right here is a scarab beetle. The name of the sun when it rises in the morning, it's called Khepra, the becoming one. So as you can see, he is becoming. It's a very mystical idea. So here is the scarab beetle. It lays its egg in a ball of dung, and then it rolls it around and buries it until it wants to hatch out. So the idea was that Khepra, the rising sun, rolled the sun up over the horizon like the sacred scarab beetle rolls his egg. That's the whole idea. And I wanted very much to find a picture for you of the winged scarab. This is the closest I could find. This is a pectoral or a pendant from King Tutankhamun. And this is made out of glass from the Libyan desert. It's meteoric glass. So the beetle isn't really pushing up the sun, but this is the solar boat in which the sun god travels across the sky, because they thought of the sky as being water, not air. So anyway, because my final slide is another version of the winged beetle, I wanted to draw that into your attention in particular. I'm going to get the hang of it soon, yes. So anyway, we start our journey. I was going to read you something about archetypes, but I don't quite know what happened to the first slide, so we'll move on. This is dawn in Egypt. I want to give you a sense of what it is to be there early in the morning, at the Sphinx looking east, at Luxor. Look at a wonderful sky that is. It's almost like there's letters in there somehow. It was very quiet and not a sound, and the little cart comes by, you hear the horse's hooves, and it's the sky that makes Egypt so magical, I think, especially early in the morning. A man at Edfu going to worship. This is the ultimate place for worship in Cairo. It's the citadel, all those domes, and they always want you to clothe your head and not wear shorts. But, Egyptian men do not wear shorts, and so if a Western tourist goes in, they give, this is one of our people, they give you a silk emerald cloak to cover your nakedness, and so that's what that's about. But it's just the most wonderful structure. Woman making bread. This is the Khan el-Khalili Bazaar. You can get lost in there for days, and this is the spice area. The Temple of Isis at Philae. 6 o'clock in the morning, the most wonderful sky I ever saw. The quality of the light is what brings things alive. Around the back of the island. One of the gardens in one of the hotels at Luxor with the sprinklers going. So many birds in the trees. There's a lack of habitat, and so they're in the monuments, they're everywhere, and their song is so beautiful. And this is what we all go to see. This is staying at the Mena House Hotel, and it's an ex-palace of King Farouk, now a beautiful hotel. So you can wake up in the morning and have breakfast within the site of the Great Pyramid. Who here has been to Egypt? Who would like to go? Well, let me do a little PSA here. There's 2 sets of brochures at the back. One is by the tour director for the groups that I have taken. She's doing her own tour. It's a very good price. She's got terrific connections, and you would have a great time. And the other one is a little more expensive, but the woman is astrologically based. And if you look at the brochures, it'll whet your appetite, and it's all doable if you have the money for the equinox, spring equinox. And of course, if 10 of you go, then I can go for free and do a sub-trip. So there's always that. And here is the god Thoth, the god of wisdom, opening the 4 doors, the 4 portals of the sky. This is from the Book of the Dead. And I would say, this is my brochure from the last trip I did, I would say at this point, let the mystery begin. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. A few years ago in Eugene, I was part of this store, and I designed the logo. It was just an inspiration. We had a year to come up with the name. There was nothing that really suggested itself, but Stargate struck me at 4 o'clock in the morning, and this was before the movie Stargate, years before the movie. There was no Stargate in the common lexicon. It was just a blip on my screen, you know. So because I've always been into the pyramid, when I did the logo, this is the Great Pyramid, and this is the Pleiades that apparently were in the midheaven when it was constructed. So hold that thought. Because Graham Hancock, you're familiar with him as an author. He's written, in particular, Fingerprints of the Gods and The Message of the Sphinx. There's something that he said years later that is to do with the way the archetypes work. Soon after we opened the store, we decided to make it open 11:11 in the morning, because that was a popular event a few years ago, and close it at 7:11, the name of a local PowerPoint, you know, because it has a certain ring to it, 11:11 to 7:11. So, you know, that's all happening for like 2 years or 3 years already before Graham Hancock writes his book on the message of the Sphinx. And I'm quoting here, this is it, page 235. See how challenging this is? Especially for a fumble bunny like me. I'm paraphrasing, but it's all here. He says, he's talking about the coordinates of the geometry in the Great Pyramid, and he says, he's talking about a geometrical problem, and he says, at any rate, it has long been recognized that the main numerical factor in the design of the Great Pyramid, is the ratio 11:11, which produces, he goes into the reason for that, and then he says, in addition, its height to the base ratio is 7:11, and together they make a stargate. So that was worth waiting for, wasn't it? So what can I say? You know, I can't rationally explain that. Anyway, I would like to just give you a clue as to the fact that the pyramid isn't just arbitrary. It's really a profound geometrical form. And I will begin accelerating the pictures at this point. But it is the center of so many things. Pythagoras had said that truth is contained in myth, symbol, and geometry. And those are the principles that, drive this slideshow. So this is a map done by Napoleon's cartographers when they were visiting Egypt. And it's the Great Pyramid is at the location which is the exact center of the Earth's landmass, as geographers would determine it, as you can see here. This is a map of the world circular before the Mercator lines of longitude and latitude, and this was put together as a reconstruction by, I think it was the Navy in something like 1947. And it's a different way of dividing up and comprehending the globe, but I think it's rather remarkable that in ancient times, the symbol of the Earth was the turtle. And this is a pre-dynastic, or maybe first dynasty, which is to say 5,000 years old, turtle with the same number of lines, as 15 lines, and like sections of a pie. I think that was an ancient map of the world. It's from the Metropolitan Museum. There's a collection of them. So here we are again. This is the delta, and right here is where the Great Pyramid is. So even the delta kind of conforms to the idea of the pyramid being in the center of that structure. The Sri Yantra mantra. Clearly you can see that it's triangles within triangles, and what is, I think has recently been discovered that this is a visual representation of the sound Om. when you put particles of sand on a tonoscope and run the sound ohm, the particles vibrate and form this pattern. So it's pyramids within pyramids, triangles within triangles. And ohm being the primal word, what better sound to replicate the shape of the pyramid? So all forms channel energy, and even in the center of a mandala, and I've chosen a lot of my imagery here because it's high frequency stuff. This is the Kala chakra. It's the initiation of all initiations. It's the wheel of time. And in all mandalas, so open yourself up to some of these images. I'll point the ones out. Open yourself up on a feeling level, and there's a part of your body or your psyche that will receive the innate energy. Excuse me? In the middle, yes, it is a pyramid. Yes, so it is a pyramid, you see, in each of the four directions, each of the quadrants. Now, here's the ultimate. This was from Carillion photography that was popular in the early 70s. It shows, with that particular kind of photography, this is a real picture, this is a pyramid grid, and here are plumes of energy that go either down or up, I'm not really clear which way, through the apices, plural, apices. And this is relevant. I hope you can see it. You can stand up at the back if you can't see. Down here are the three pyramids at the Giza Plateau, and Orion, the constellation right now, is at its highest culmination. This is as high as it gets at this time in the precessional cycle. And so the thought here is, or the theoretical, that we can't show it in real terms, but we can diagram it. From the apices of each of the pyramids is an energetic connection, like you just saw with the light plumes, to the central belt stars. This is the subject of a book called The Orion Mystery by Robert Bauval. And so this is at the highest culmination. This is the way that the Maya regard the same constellation, and they regard it as a turtle. They just sort of join the dots this way, and so it's like a turtle with its legs. We'll discuss this a little more later on. So on the one hand, it's like a man standing. The Egyptians would say Osiris, you know, but it has other similar meanings for other cultures in the world. So this is the way the Mayans regard the turtle, and you see the word pyramid, it means PYR, which is pyramid, and then PYR is the Greek root for fire, and then mid means the middle. So the word pyramid means the fire in the middle. This is the M42 Nebula of the Orion constellation. This is the outline you see. And so for the Mayans, the hearthstone is three stones on which you put the pots, and the fire in the middle is the fire in the middle. But the M42 Nebula is, in fact, a generating galaxy. I was trying to find a photograph, but I couldn't get it in time. So it's producing other stars. It's a productive, fecundating region of the universe. So the fire in the middle and the pyramid are related, and Orion and the pyramid contain a great secret, which I think is being revealed even as we speak, you know. So I want to take you on a journey to Egypt, and what better place to start than visiting the Giza Plateau and the three pyramids, which replicate the three belt stars. So this is the map of the delta. Egypt goes probably for 1,000 miles from Cairo all the way down to the Nubian border. So we're looking at from the sky. A few years ago, before the dam was actually constructed to deal with the flooding of the Nile, the Nile flood would come right the way up to the Giza Plateau, whereas now Cairo has encroached and the Nile is nowhere to be seen. But this is a bird's eye view. So here we are, landed on the Giza Plateau. Oops. Now, this is the only one I could find. It's from National Geographic. It's very faint, it's hazy, but it's Giza the way it is now. Since I was there 3 years ago, they've built a 23-foot high wall around the Giza Plateau. It's 9 feet thick. There are video monitors periodically all around. And the wall goes all the way from the Giza Plateau here, roughly out in this area, all the way down to Saqqara, where the Step Pyramid is, and that's 25 miles. So this is because they're doing all these excavations in the workman's village. I'm looking for the Sphinx. How do you mislay the Sphinx? Second pyramid, there's the Sphinx. Okay. Mostly tourists don't go beyond this point. There's a wall called the Wall of the Crow, which they have restricted now. And so this is all being dug up. There's a bakery, there's pottery, there's tombs, there's dwellings. It's a huge excavation, and they don't want tomb raiders or robbery of the artifacts. So this is him. It was 11 years in the reconstruction and the repair. And just before they completed it, there was a guardian there. We have, because we know Dr. Hawass, you see, we have between the paws of the Sphinx early on at dawn on the spring equinox. He lets our group do that. So the guardian was saying, "Oh, poor Sphinxus, poor Sphinxus." And I said, "Well, why?" And he said, well, I won't say it because he was talking like this in Arabic, you know, but what he was saying was, it's the last time they're going to repair the Sphinx. It has patches on its patches, and the groundwater, because of the dam in the south, is actually seeping all over Egypt at the same height and dissolving the monuments. And so at some point soon, they're going to let Upper Egypt, which is the southern portion below the delta, they're going to let it go. There are sites there for which there is no funding, that haven't been excavated, but I've seen places in the desert where you can look down and it's never going to be brought to light. And so they're going to focus on the delta region, which is actually quite old, but it's not the same as the south, where the ancient kings were and all of that. So that will be a great tragedy, but it's the cost of modern development and electricity that's needed. So here it is when it's all squeaky clean and new. It's really huge. It looks at a hill. Another nice view, late afternoon. And this is the third pyramid by Menkaure. And what I want to point out, a lot of the stone facing has been stripped off over the years just for building, you know, Cairo and other monuments. But you see these little semicircular things. They show up on the big wall monuments in Peru, like Machu Picchu, those huge, huge blocks. We don't know how they lifted them, but they seem to have this. So either these were kind of handles to help lift them, and yet there's one at a very particular point in the pyramid, and so maybe they had a symbolic significance too. The Egyptians call them breasts, so what can I say? But anyway. So this is it, close up. This is the Great Pyramid, and the top is nowhere in sight. Does that give you a sense of it? To see it for the first time, it really is the primo wonder of the world. So it goes way, way up. A view from the top. You're not allowed up there now, but this is late afternoon. And that at the top is the original building, the original entrance, which is blocked, and this is the one that was blasted by Caliph al-Mamun, I think, in the 12th century. So this is the lower one is the way you enter to go inside the Great Pyramid. So I thought you might like to, have the experience of being in there. So you're just inside the entrance, okay? Looking out. And some writers talk about the labyrinthine passages within the pyramid. I don't see any labyrinth, do you? It's basically 3, 1, 2, 3, and this is like a tiny little escape hatch. You wouldn't go down there. So that's really all there is to it. But there may be more. And this is the first horizontal passage. It's been called the Queen's somebody's coming out there. It's been called the Queen's Chamber, but it really has nothing to do with the Queen. It was for the opening of the mouth ceremony. Now this is red granite, but it's not that red. It's just the way the photograph came out. So all that you see in there is, this is one of the, oops, excuse me. This is one of the ventilation or star shafts. There are two. And this one goes to Sirius, which was the goddess Isis. And this is interesting, and we won't get into it here. It's just a niche in the wall.
Can you explain what you mean by it goes to Sirius?
Oh, it's aligned with Sirius. Or at least, I don't know that it's aligned with it now. It was aligned at the building of the pyramid with the constellation, with the star Sirius, which is at the heels of Orion. You see, these stars were related to deities, which were related to the mythology, but all portrayed really special things in the astronomy that have meaning in terms of the evolution of the planet. That's what's cosmic about the whole thing, that they understood this. Excuse me? Well, the big one. Yeah, Isis was Sothis, the great star, you know. Yeah. Not the satellite, the big star. It's the brightest star in the sky. So this is what was up the so-called Queen's Chamber one. There was a special on Fox getting behind this. They talk about it as being a door, but the shaft itself is like 8.5 inches square. So it's a block blocking off the passageway. And they didn't find anything significant, but they were kind of saying, well, we'll have to investigate this more, so please stand by and watch this space. So hopefully there'll be more to find out what's behind the thing that's behind it. Because when they put a laser beam under this crack originally, they found that it went 30 feet, implying that there was a cavity there. So here we go. This is just a quick thing. See, this is the star shafts, Sirius. This is Bauval's map. He says that it goes to this one. It really goes to the central one. There's a reason for that. Ursa Minor. This is Polaris, our pole star now. And the King's... let's see, that's in the Queen's Chamber. This is the King's Chamber one, goes to Tuban, which was in the middle of Draco the dragon, which was the pole star. That was the pole star in 26,500 years BC. And Draco always revolves around the pole star, no matter what it is, apparently.
At what time of the year is that alignment?
It isn't aligning now. That was when the pyramid was built.
Because it would only be like one day of the year that alignment would...
Well, the pole star is always at north. Oh, I can't tell you that. I don't know. But Robert Bauval might have said it in his book. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, anybody that's got a good astronomical... Okay. Yeah. Like DNA. Yeah. So this... Yeah. I tell you what, I love to have interaction with the audience, but I've got so many of these slides I'd like to really... come in on time on it, so I might accelerate a little bit. So anyway, this is the grand gallery. The bottom, the passageway, if you can see it, I can't tell you if it's going up or down. It looks level, but it's like a huge inclination. It's probably going up. And then this is the section of, you come up there, you have to bend down, little sort of portcullis area. This is the King's Chamber, where all the intrigue is. So what I would like to say in terms of the prophecies, it's really not prophecies. It was a timeline that apparently was established in the geometry of the ascending passageways into this area. And so right here, when you go in, that's like half of a, it's like a stela or a slab that sticks out, and you crouch to get down there. Well, the date represented at this point was September 17, 2001. 5 days after the 9/11. So all of that. So what is interesting about that, when I wrote my book, I thought, well, the only way to find out what really might happen on that day is that it's going to be something astronomical/astrological that might tell us something. So it was Neptune at 7 degrees of Aquarius. And the whole chart was very complex. But for those of you who are familiar with Dane Rudhyar's The Astrological Mandala, it's like an astronomical or astrological I Ching. There's a little symbol that represents each degree. And so 7 degrees of Aquarius, the keynote is no. The keynote is the emergence of new mutations according to the great rhythms of the cosmos. And the actual vignette, the picture that symbolizes that degree, is a child being born out of an egg. Now, the slideshow is pretty much about eggs. An egg represented so much for ancient people. I just want to read you one thing. It spoke about the ancient symbolism of the cosmic egg. In Sanskrit, the Hiranyagarbha, is out of which a new universe is born, can be interpreted in several levels. Here we see the appearance of a new type of human being who is born not from ancestors and who therefore is free from the inertia of mankind's past. He is a new product of evolution, a mutant. He constitutes a fresh projection of the creative spirit that emanates from the cosmic planetary whole and not from any local culture or racial tradition. And it says the emergence of global man for the new age. The power of the whole is focused within him and perfect freedom from ancient standards of value and local conditions. Well, this was written in the early 70s before sexist language became a no-no. But anyway, that was so incredibly right on because I was ready with my slideshow, essentially this slideshow, for this date, which I showed in Eugene. And so before I tell you about that, this is inside the King's Chamber, and it's really interesting because 3 out of 5 photographs are superimposed like this. It looks ghostly. You seldom get the photograph the way it really is. There's some sort of bleed through from prior or subsequent photograph. I mean, it's just a phenomenon. So that was the chart. And another thing that it said was changes in the sun and changes in radiation. That was with Uranus in... There's a copy of the book in the library, so I can't backtrack on the exact astrology, but we are seeing changes in the sun even as we speak. You know, it's acting up, it's doing things it's never done before, it's very intense. Ultraviolet, neutrinos, gamma rays, all kinds of things, solar wind, electromagnetic. These are all things that the Mayans spoke about, that at this time the sun would begin to speak. And so although people that watch for space weather might feel overwhelmed at these times, and especially with the electromagnetic, it's all a purifying pro-evolutionary energy. So people think they feel funny, they feel weird. If you're electromagnetically sensitive, you would. And I think what's interesting is they've discovered that it affects the limbic system, which is to say it increases your fear levels. Ultraviolet affects the pineal gland, so too much ultraviolet can predispose one to cancer and cellular mutation. But you see the upside of that, which I really want to communicate here, is that the pineal gland is the seat of higher consciousness. So ultraviolet, being the color of the pineal gland, also fosters our evolutionary stability or stabilization at that level of consciousness. So sixth chakra is what this is giving us the opportunity to embody and integrate. And so the sixth chakra has to do with unitive consciousness. It's beyond the polarities of the left and the right eye. The I am presence is at that level. So global unity is being prefaced by all kinds of chaos, but at the same time, the forces from the sun itself are both negative and positive in the short-term effects, but the long-term is always positive. And so it reminds me of the old teachings, the light that illumines also blinds. Okay? So within a week of putting the slideshow together, I was walking out of the library and I saw this edition. This was for the first week of January, and it was the Space Odyssey Child. It says here, trends and people to whatever. Building a new human is one of the things. These were all positive things. Space travel, beyond globalization, the next, I can't read it, and venture philanthropy. But the whole idea is building a new human, because this is to do with what I read you about 7 degrees of Aquarius. The new divinely improved mutant who is a product of evolution and cosmic forces. And the downside is we're going to be cloning, creating all kinds of things that are not really in divine harmony, I don't think. So here's Mother Teresa, presumably with one of the new beautiful children. But, I mean, this is a whole can of worms, but I just wanted to illustrate the idea of cloning and the total abomination that it can be with experimentation. When let's say, when wisdom is short and intellect is long, this is a sweet little creature who has become... every disease you can imagine is warehoused in shoeboxes in this place in the Midwest. And so the sweet little face is still there. This is a hybrid, cloned, genetically modified mouse that is for skin diseases and hair texture. And the other one wasn't ready in time for the slideshow, but this one is to do with inflammation and something else. Yeah. So we're looking at the face of evil with a lot of this stuff. I used not to believe that evil existed, but I do. I think what we do to the animals is where it shows up most. Segueing to the Hopi Prophecy, Grandfather David, the keeper of the prophecy for the Fire Clan, Thomas Ben Yakya in Eugene, flowers from my garden. He was the messenger of the prophecy, and he was on the circuit between 1947 and until a few years ago when he passed on. And here is the Hopi Prophecy. All the Hopi Prophecy has been fulfilled, including the appearance of the blue star. And the only thing that hasn't been fulfilled is what we're in right now, this window of time called the Great Purification. Signs of it are everywhere, but it's not in its fullness. So anyway, I want to make up for a little time here. This is the First and Second World War. This is the blue star that was to appear, which appeared in 1987 as a supernova, which I'll talk about. And Grandfather David Monongi, he had said that the blue star, the whole world would know about it, and that it would be a mystery egg. It would hatch something mysterious, and that it would either bring wholeness and integration or death and destruction. So because this has been my life work, I was always trolling the library, looking for signs of the blue star and what was a blue star. There were several that were expected to go supernova, but the one that did was a complete surprise. They called it SN 1987A. And it appeared in the Large Magellanic Cloud, that's at the edge of the universe near the South Celestial Pole. And it was 170 million light years away, moving in. And you see the light at the bottom right there, that's it. And very interesting things happened. It blasted out neutrinos in such an abundance that it was a phenomenon all over the world. This was a global phenomenon in the major press and continues to be so. Neutrinos usually come from the sun, but they'd never captured any from a supernova. So it was estimated that everybody in the world had at least one neutrino go through their body. This is Spirit Force of the Stars. Those of you familiar with Jim Hertak's book, The Keys of Enoch, I think it's Key 205, he had spoken about in the future, like now, a phenomenon that would release seeds of light for the awakening of the children of light. So I do like to think that this was it. So on the very day of the ground phase of the Gulf War in 1991, there was a recrudescence of the shockwave on that very day, and it was in the New York Times and, you know, all of the major newspapers everywhere. And strangely enough, when they moved to the greater escalation, that was on the 4th birthday of the supernova. And then 10 years later, which was a couple of years ago already, it recrudesced, and this is a picture from it's still doing its thing and changing form, and it's not dying quietly. And they say that by 2007, the last part of the blast wave will catch up with the original shock wave, and it will be a phenomena which you probably might be able to see with the naked eye from certain areas. It's nothing like has ever happened before. And so this is a couple of years back in Sky and Telescope. Shiva's drum, you know, all kinds of implications. And of course the other thing is it is a force of evolution, because when the native people say we come from the stars, I think that probably they do mean that compositely we come from the stars, because the calcium in your bones was seeded from supernova explosions, the iron in your blood, the copper or the nickel in the change in your pocket. All of the metals came from supernova blasts, and I did discover that there was a supernova between every one of the last few Mayan, either Katuns, I think, or Bactuns. So these are sort of a clockwork timing of something or other in the cosmos. How the Hopi would have known about this, we don't know, but it definitely fulfilled all the requirements and more. So I wanted to show a person is always grounding. So this is he was 25 at the time. He's an astrophysicist called Adam Rice, and he was the guy that actually made the discovery that the universe is accelerating, not slowing down. The positioning of the supernova was in the exact place where on the edge of the universe. It was in the Greater Magellanic Cloud, which is a sub-galaxy on the edge of our galaxy. And so by knowing where that supernova was, they were able to detect the edge of our known universe and determine whether the universe, they thought it would be slowing down, like, you know, the inertia of it slowing down, but it's speeding up. So that discovery won the Science Award of the Year in 1998. So he was 25. It reminds me of Einstein, you know, doing the relativity theory when he was 26. So let's hear it for youth. This is from National Geographic. It's just a schematic. Here's the planet, and there's the Greater Magellanic Cloud there. So it's on the edge of the known universe. So this is a very important discovery. So I'm getting back, this is one of my collages, I'm getting back to the idea of the child in the cosmic egg. And so this is the supernova blast, egg-shaped. And I just want to start with the microcosm really quickly, because this is like an archetype that explains a whole lot. The thing being, in a bubble chamber, negative particles, which you could determine as female, go in circles. The positively charged particles shoot in straight lines. You could say masculine particles. And so that's what they do. But occasionally they will collide. And from the union of the forward thrust of the line and the conserving principle of the circle is born the spiral. And the spiral is the form of the universe. That carries evolution. So from your fingerprints and the swirls on your head, or leaves unfolding around the stem of a flower, everything in nature is sporadic in nature. So I needed to say that because I don't want to get into left brain stuff that makes you nervous, but in terms of evolution, we're at a point where that principle needs to be embodied, and it is happening, so that's the good news. So when nothing gets to be something, okay, you have energy, and it gets more complex and you get gas, okay, mineral, plant, animal, human. I've called this transhuman, and perhaps beyond that we might say angelic, or maybe extraterrestrial, who knows. But anyway, at this point, and I've made it like an egg, because that carries the spiral. At this point in history where we're at the threshold between human as we know it and biology as we know it, the advances in science and medicine are taking us beyond a certain threshold. So I don't mean to sound sexist, but it seems like an observation that men have run the world up to recent times. And so, you know, it's been linear, left brain, progressive, outward. And we're messing up the planet and the ecology and endangering all life forms. So instead of turning the circle and doing the spiral thing, it would go vectoring off into space. So clearly the divine imperative is for women to get in the driver's seat. You can't just say, may I come in the front with you? You just say, move over, I'm coming in. And so from the deep psyche arises images and the return of the goddess, the divine feminine, because the divine feminine and the divine masculine belong together. So yes, exciting. So that isn't news, but because I do the Egyptian thing, and that seems to be my highest path, this is the goddess of love and joy, Hathor, and all the deities were sort of modeled upon animals. They all have animal heads and human bodies. That's just because I don't think they were cloned. I just think that the characteristics of the animals inform the nature of the deity. So she was a cow, the gentle, docile, life-giving, milk-giving cow. But this is by, I think, an artist that lives in Mount Shasta, Dawn Wilson. So it's true to the original Hathor. She's beautiful, she's transmitting. There's a real transmission going on. She's sending love and energy, flower of life in each palm. It's open yourself to that loving energy. So she is my experience with the goddess. I had a personal experience some years ago, and this is the thing of it, another stranger than fiction, believe it or not. We were going to Memphis, which is where in 5,000 years ago, Upper and Lower Egypt were first united, the joining of the two lands, so that Egypt became one rather than warring factions. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to go to Memphis and we'll do process there and we'll unite our higher and lower selves. So we're there, and it was very discouraging. It was piffle in the wind. I mean, it was just like nothing really there. But then we saw this, it's actually an indentation. So you can't get the scale of it here, but these are Hathor heads. So moving closer. What they are, I wouldn't even dare touch it, you know, like I just put my hand close. And this is a woman who's taking one of the Egypt trips that I've got the brochure for at the back. Anyway, that's how big it is. These are the tops of columns that held up a temple roof. The temple hasn't been, this was discovered in 87 apparently, and the actual columns probably go 50 feet below the ground. So the metaphor, the mythic metaphor here is that at the joining of the two lands where we can do process for our higher and lower selves, there is the goddess arising from deep, deep beneath the earth. And so to translate that would be to say, from our deepest psyches of our highest self, the goddess is emergent. So I don't know if you can get the profundity of that. I hope I explained it well, but Egypt is full of this, and I seem to have an affinity, for some of this stuff. So much of the research that I share with you is not to be found in a book. It's by joining the dots of what seems to be obvious and things like that. So this is the Temple of Hathor in the Western Desert. Whoops. Early Christians apparently did deface everything. That's literally defacing the columns of the outer area. The famous zodiac, circular zodiac, is at Dendera. That's where her temple is. See, and to ritually blind the eyes or to deface the nose was always done to disempower the living essence that a statue would represent. And so you would ritually blind them, and by cutting off the nose or damaging it, they would not be able to breathe. You would kill the spirit. That's what they believed. So that's what a lot of the defacement is. There are the columns in the temple, see? But the thing with Hathor, the goddess of love and joy, she wasn't always the goddess of love and joy. She was the daughter of Ra, the principle of light. But at the end of a previous cycle, mythically speaking, when we were destroying the earth and plotting against the creator and ruining everything, Ra, in the Egyptian system, said, "This is terrible. I don't know what to do. I think I'm going to have to, like in the shamanic tradition, I'm going to have to destroy it all and start again." So Hathor was regarded as the wrathful eye that destroyed humanity and had to be stopped. So the wrathful eye is the comet. You don't read that, but the research strongly suggests beyond a shadow of a doubt that the comet is the recurrent agent of the end of world cycles. And we'll get into that here. Another one. So she does have the cometary symbol here and here on her headdress. Her headdress is a musical sistrum. And you shake a sistrum, and these two things on the edge, they go doing, doing. They're coiled metal, but they are attached like that. So that's the comet symbol. But anyway, after she had done the deed and destroyed humanity, she was retrieved, and it was a bad job, but somebody had to do it, and she became the beloved of the gods. And so that's from that point on, she became the goddess of love and joy. So the symbolism just shows up everywhere. This is rather mystical. I can't quite tell you what these mean. If we had more time, I'd hazard a guess, but I don't know for sure. Anyway, there's more that are obvious. I just want you to see that. That is the ultimate example of terminating with extreme prejudice, defacing the face of Hathor. Here is another goddess from another theological stream, Sekhmet or Sakhmet. She was the fierce goddess of war. She also was the wrathful eye on behalf of another creator god. It's all the same creator god, but they had different names in different regions. So everybody likes her. She's powerful. You see, it represents women's energy and righteous indignation. Now, she was the comet par excellence. You get the picture. And here's another energized one. Gold-leafed Cairo Museum, 18 inches high, very homely, but incredibly energized. I don't know what that's about. I used to think the energy I would feel from some of the seated statues was to do with the magnetite in the rock. But this is just paper mache and gesso, and yet something powerful going on there. Different depictions. You should be so lucky to go to Karnak. It's a temple. If you didn't know how to get there, you wouldn't know how to get there. You go in, it's dark. It's noisy and hot outside. You come in, and it's really cool and dark. And when your eyes become accustomed to the light, there's a hole in the ceiling, which was the only lighting in some of the temples, in the early temples. And so she's illuminated in what looks like moonlight. And so I let people go in. Depends how many people in the group, but maybe have 3 minutes alone or in small groups with the goddess. And people have, I think she's become, with the transformation of myth over time, she has become the granter of boons. And so she's regarded as the great living goddess still. And I could show you other photographs where it's just a statue, but here the eyes, there's something with the eyes that is a little unexplainable. So all of that. Now, this is a Peruvian statuette. All it says in the art book I got it from is Peruvian snake god. But this just depicts the idea of the eye as the comet. The comet was often a serpent that would dart, and it was to do with the consciousness of the evil eye. The evil eye could be a comet originally. So it was something that physically came out of the pupil. They thought it was a real force that would strike like a serpent out of the eye. And so that really was the origin of the idea of the Eye of Horus and all of these comet symbols. That's what they are. There's many more pictures to be had. So the Eye of Horus is the pole star, which was the thigh, which was the way they joined up the dots of the bear, Ursa Major at the time. The Eye of Horus, and here is the comet again. So this was the symbol of power of the king, who the king was an embodiment of Horus, the divine hawk. The hawk is a raptor. He's magnificent and wonderful, and you don't want to mess with him. He's the king of the birds. So that the king was always the living Horus. And so here we have another one with, can you see it there? The hawk? A hawk or a falcon in the middle of the eye. So that's one of the great mysteries that is hidden in the symbolism. And the crown itself is spoken of in the text as being the eye. Now, this is the white of the eye, the conjunctiva, and here's the comet. The red crown is like part of an eye, and this is the king's symbol, and that's the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. This is his symbol of power, the comet. Although it also became used as just a symbol of rank. The crown's got to be pretty fancy over time. This is a late period crown, but see, here's those things like Hathor has. This is the comet, each side of the crown. And all of the symbolism has a meaning. Now, this is Min, the god of fertility, and I wanted to show this is from an oracle deck, because this is a symbol of the lightning bolt or the thunderbolt. He is the fecundator who fecundates the earth. He's a storm god. So here I want to get into a little bit of multicultural link-up. It's not just the Egyptians. These were common ideas to the ancient world, especially in the Middle East. Another one of Min. I don't know what this object is. I can only think it must be a corn silo or a granary, because he was the fecundator of the crops, you see. So here is another symbol. And there was a Min festival, and so it's like a maypole, and they would do this every year. So this is a symbol for fire. This is a shrine, and this is a papyrus thing, and I'll show you this. That's the comet again. This is line drawing of some more symbols with the comet, and I think they are granaries. And so, you know, meteor strikes, lightning strikes, all of these things are beneficial to the earth. See, now this is the god Baal from Ras Shamra. He's got his hair, curly hair will coil, and he's wearing a similar symbol on his hair, and bull horns. In the Age of Aries, the bull was very popular in all deities and royalty. So from other cultures, this is 14th century, so the symbolism still survives. And here we go. This is a coin minted for Tiberius Caesar by Pilate, Pontius Pilate, who did the crucifixion. Symbol there, symbol of authority. Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec god, with, I always want to say this is his douchebag, you know, it's really, I don't know what it is, but it's some sort of a scepter, and he's got it there. And here we go. We're coming to the end of the carousel. This is an emperor's robe from China. this is, to interpret the symbolism, this is the cosmic axis that runs between heaven and earth. The lines of force that, like you see the strata of a section of a volcano, how it all comes up, so this is like the primordial mound out of which everything came in the first time. So these are phalluses or navels which represent the center of the earth. Every ancient city was the center. It was all the navel of the earth. Every sacred city, every sacred mountain, they were all navels or phalluses. So coming up to the chess piece, symbol of the comet. And the dragon here is either Draco the dragon or one of the comets that maybe would have been Venus or Mars in primordial times that Velikovsky spoke of. We think that Venus really was on the rampage. It shows up in a lot of other cultural things. So this is more of a close-up, surrounded by fire. And any good authentic dragon worth his dragonness nearly always has flukes coming off the side of his face or off his neck that are comet-like. You will look out for that in any cultural dragon. If it's authentic, it will have these coiled symbols around its neck. So this is a Christian augur staff based on the ancient augurs. An augur was an official in Greece or Rome around that time who would predict major events based on signs of nature, the most profound of which was the comet. So Christians say, no, this is like a fiddlehead of a fern. This is nature. Yes, it is a fern, but look what's inside: scales, and a serpent, a dragon. So this is definitely a veiled cometary symbol too. And if there's any doubt, here's another one, 13th century, with a similar dragon or entity devouring a Christian lamb. I mean, and yet the whole crozier, or it's called a liturus, or an augur's wand, it's all in the shape of the comet. So that was the most terrifying thing that the ancients could imagine, and it could be for us too. So I'm segueing now into the downlinking or the upshooting of celestial or terrestrial energies through the apex of an obelisk. This is, I wanted to show just this. The ancient wisdom college of the entire early 4th dynasty Egyptian era was Unu or Anu, which means Heliopolis, the place of the obelisk. And so this is all that's left right now. But they haven't done it. Oh, and this is Karnak at noontime, you see. And so this is the Concorde in Paris. This is, the Egyptians would put electrum at the top. It's an alloy of gold and silver. So they had this beautifully restored, and the apex was shining in the light when I was there last year. And so that was pretty nice to see it restored to its full attribute, you know. So this is off the top of a real pyramid of Amenemhet III. It's in the Cairo Museum, granite. And you know what this is. New Order of the Ages, which is different than, what is the other thing? The New World Order. The New World Order is what we've got too much of already. The New Order of the Ages is the ideal. And so it's still being used. Annuit Septus, he has prospered our undertakings. And on the reverse it says, out of the one, many, or out of the many, one. So the ideals behind America and its founding are very high indeed. And the ascendant of America at 14 degrees of Sagittarius in this astrological mandala, the symbol is the Sphinx and the pyramids. So, you know, all of that. So these were psychically derived symbols that had nothing to do with just constructing symbols to fit It's just that they happen to fit because the whole science of numbers and astronomy and degrees of a circle all are archetypal numbers that have a meaning that you can attribute a really meaningful symbol to. So this is the last one in this carousel. Because I showed this originally on the last day of the pyramid's chronology, which was September 17, 2001. This is by an artist that leaves a nice feeling. It's like the light that the pyramid focalizes is placed above the planet. And I get the sense of protection from this. And I think as a mode of personal protection, it's really nice too, because we know that it really does channel energy in a good way. And so this is like summarizing an image that we could hold as an inspiration for what may be troubled times ahead. So here endeth the first carousel. Some geometric stuff. Here's the pyramid again. And I don't know the roots of Freemasonry, but they're very deep and very profound. And they're to be found in ancient Egypt for sure. This is Seti II at the Temple of Abydos. I'm afraid some of the wall reliefs do not photograph well, and so I had to ink in the outline. But this is the goddess Isis, and she's sitting the royal prince on her lap, and she is telling him the royal secret for when he becomes king. And I have to find a better one, because this image that his feet are on, this is the throne of Egypt. The square, of course, is always representing the earth. And this imagery underneath, and you'll see more of them, it represents the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, or the higher and the lower self, whichever way you look at it. So the secret of the royal prince is how to embody the balance of the polarities and integrate the inner and the outer. So this is the side of a throne, and these are the gods of the Upper and the Lower Nile. There's a cross strut, a vertical column. It looks like sort of a shovel, heart-shaped thing, and these are cords which each of the gods holds. That's called the smar. Now, does anybody know the name Shwela de Lubitsch? He's dead now, but he was he was probably the foremost symbolist. John, what's his name? John. A contemporary Egyptologist. Yeah, John Anthony West, an independent rogue Egyptologist. By the way, I have to say I'm an independent Egyptologist myself. I'm not affiliated with an academic community setting at this time. So anyway, John's a very good symbolist too. But they were all saying that the smar represents the lungs. Like, duh, I don't think so. But anyway, I must tell you about this. I kept this, and since 1972, it was a newspaper, it was a magazine ad for Benson and Hedges lights. Benson and Hedges lights. It's Ramesses II at the entryway to Karnak or Luxor, and the ad, the phrase underneath the ad said, "Smoking kills." Well, I guess it was a good ad because it's so off the wall. I kept it all these years, and now you're getting the ad, So anyway, I hope Ramesses would have some humor. But anyway, that's the throne that you were seeing the side of. I had to include it. So there's me, and you see how huge it is. I mean, it's absolutely enormous. So this is Fourth Dynasty, which is like the same age as the pyramids. They're all slightly different. Sometimes it's the gods of the Upper and Lower Nile. Sometimes it's Horus and Set, the good and the so-called evil brother, the polarities. I'm showing a few of the exhibits from King Tutankhamun's treasures from the Cairo Museum because they're so beautiful. But that symbol originally was on each of the sides of the chair. All that's left is the central thing. It's just been damaged. And this is the god of time with millions of years in his hands. Anyway, so the king was sitting on balance. The king was, usually let's see. This is Tut's throne. You could see some more there. Not quite. Well, they're just as damaged as the other one was. But the idea is that he sits upon Sma, unity. And I'm saying that it isn't lungs because S is the active verb. And Ma means divine right order. It has an implication of truth and justice to it. So this is the activation, the living present symbol of Sma, the embodiment. So it's like if you sat on a Sma symbol, it would, and you integrated it, you would be the living embodiment. So that's what the S can do on the front of one of the Egyptian words. So here you see them on the side. There's another stool. Some more. I just have to make a little jokey about this one. You know how young men love to make everything modern and technological. So this is obviously a screen and they're waiting for the popcorn, you know. But I don't think so. This is the symbol of the god Amun, no. Amun, yes, who is the great unknowable god. So this is the symbol for sky, and everything underneath is unknowable. So that's his symbol. It was incorporated in an alabaster vase. It showed up everywhere because it was so sacred and so important. Now, when I was here in '96, I've inked in what can't be seen, but I go, oh my God, because the comet symbol, I was working with a comet symbol at the time, and it seemed to me that this had sort of coils on it, but I thought, oh, that must be just an individual, you call it artifact. It's like it's atypical. It's not significant, it's atypical. But I noticed it. Well, later on, the symbol was something that's rare and undiscovered. It's like, it's a great treasure when you find it. And then over time, you see it everywhere. And then suddenly when that happens, it becomes commonplace and it loses its appeal. Well, this was certainly a case like that. This is what the African people will call Sankofa. Every black person recognizes Sankofa. And what that means, and this is the symbol for it, it means return and fetch. And this might be the most important part of the show today. The comet, starting and uncoiling from a beginning to a point of crisis. And you have to make that, you know, the time of transition is now. Otherwise, the comet will return. If something isn't learned, if something isn't remembered, you know, we have crisis and disaster at the end of the cycle. So the idea is that you return and fetch that which has been forgotten and lost. So in that sense, the past is the key to the future, because the past is always the pure time when it was in its fullness, but over time we make up the rules, we do what's expedient, and you have a culture that is has disconnected wisdom from knowledge. So that's the nature of the crisis. So if we can, like in the shamanic process, return and retrieve and re-embody that which has spun off, we've gone to pieces, we're falling apart, it's all in the language, then we have a chance of doing it right. I think what Jung would say about reincorporating that which has been forgotten is still known by many native cultures. The Mesoamerican cultures in general, they will say, it is not memory that calls up the past. It is the past itself that returns for healing, completion, and apotheosis. And apotheosis means the realization of the ideal. So if we can reincorporate those psychic structures that we've forgotten or that are still dormant, then we can become whole and reconstellate our fractured selves according to the archetype of the self. So that's the nature of the crisis right now. We cannot afford to ignore what we understand of native wisdom. Edfu, the stuff in Edfu that actually is getting out the archives, the history of the world. It's only in French. I spent hundreds of dollars on translations from the French. What's at Edfu is so profound and so exciting as to be unbelievable. And it's the most recent of all the temples. It took 350 years to build, and it was only in use for 74 years before the Ptolemies moved in. It was actually built under a Ptolemy ruler, but I think they thought, in view of the history of the excellence of Egypt, because the Greeks learned their wisdom from the Egyptians too, I think they wanted to do it right, and so whatever was secret and hidden, they embodied in the architecture and the inscriptions of this temple. This is inside. And this is the moment. There were 17 people took this different parts of this photograph. This is that symbol again, the smar with the curly things. And I was going, oh, here it is, here it is. I was getting all hysterical. So they'll go, what? But this is a hybrid. They used to hybridize the hieroglyphs. So what this is actually saying is good, beautiful. It incorporates the heart and the balance of opposites. So that's a very profound symbol. And that's where I found it, at Edfu. And then I began seeing it in lots of places after that. So this is a close-up of what it looked like. So it's tree of life, all that I just said, the radiance of the sun, and the jed, which I'm wearing around my neck. This could be the most powerful and the most profound symbol for our time. And I have something about it coming up. I just wanted to show you a whole bunch of these that showed up. This was a door jamb, Tutmosis the 3rd, 18th dynasty. Here it is again, with the Sphinx on the top. That was from a doorway in Cairo. They used to dismantle all the monuments and build them for other stuff. It's like recycling. The two deities are circumpolar stars. This is Horus, the divine hawk, who represented the king. As you can see, the tip of this, the smar, is the Sankofa. A tomb ceiling in Beni Hassan in Egypt. This is a coin that was, it's Greek, it's 350 BC. It was used to pay Greek mercenaries, but this is the symbol for gold, the smar, the heart, and nepha, which means good or beautiful, is solid gold, and somebody put all the high symbols in with the gold. There was nothing higher than gold. I'd love to have that on a t-shirt. I thought it'd be nice. Now, this is interesting. I do have to just pause a minute and get you what this says. This is 14th century Spanish. Here you've got the symbol. It's ecclesiastical Christian. You have, sometimes with this, you would get the sphinxes, the double sphinx. You would get birds that are facing each other. Off the side of it's from a long curtain or something like that. So these are birds, almost like swans or geese or something. And yeah, maybe a peacock. It's sort of rather generic. Bear with me while I get it for you. Okay. It says, pardon my Latin, if that's what it is, Liber de secretus sectorum sive de regimen principium vel dominorum. I think it's from Aristotle, but what it means is, and there was a book written about it, and this was the cover taken from this particular tapestry, and it's the primary principle of the secret of secrets. So that's an early Christian indication that they understood the profundity of this symbol. A Christian woodcut from the 13th century. Here we go. This is another emperor's robe. We have an upside down one here, and maybe here. I enlarged it, yes. So they're all over the place. I enlarged it a bit because it was so tiny. It's like reading the small print. These Maria Gimbutas, who did a lot of the goddess excavations in Eastern Europe. This is a village in Lithuania, smars up the yin-yang, but it's a Christian icon. Is there any doubt that those are smars, you know? 17th century. Oh, and I love this. I found this recently. Does anybody know what this is? It's a Navajo, I don't know the provenance, it's a Navajo wrist guard. It's leather, and this is the tie. And I'll show you a close-up. It's a wrist guard for when you're shooting the bow and arrow to prevent the snapback of the bowstring. But the symbol being that, oh, it's upside down. I thought I did it. Never mind. It's supposed to be this way up. You see, the archer would see himself at this point, the point of unity. He's shooting the bow straight. Here's a deflecting arc each side, so that the arrow will shoot true and straight between the smars. So he's shooting with higher consciousness, almost like a samurai. He wants to hit the mark in a good way, and may it be guided by the truth of his heart. You see how this is so sacred? Now, anybody familiar with Alex Gray's mystical psychedelic paintings? This is from a close-up from the Cosmic Christ. Whether this was innate, if it was innate, it would be because it's archetypal. I seriously doubt that he knew what it was, because as far as I've been able to tell, no Egyptologists know what the Sma is. It seems self-evident when I tell you, you know, like Ma is, you know, divine right order, and S is the active verb. But he's got it in the spiral nebula as the eyes. And in the place of the third eye is the Sma, out of which grows the tree of life, if that's what it is, or an angel with wings. So it goes on, you see. And if he saw that in an inner vision, it's because of the innate truth of the symbol to be residing in our consciousness regardless. So if there's any doubt about what a Sma is, I found this in an old dictionary. What does that look like to you? A drill. It's spin, counterspin, spin, counterspin. You can't have all good or all evil. It's got to be the balance, like night and day, the seasons, the on, off, the up, down. It's the duality in motion. But even the motion of it has to be in balance. So here's the idea of churning. Oh, by the way, I've also happened upon this in the dictionary. The bindings have fallen off my hieroglyphic dictionaries. Sma also means butter. So this would be a butter churn as well, you see. It's interwoven. So this is Hindu. The deity on a lotus column on the back of a turtle, which is the earth, the great serpent Sesha, and the two deities, negative and positive, are pulling on the snake to churn the cosmic axis. The cosmic axis is that connection of light between the North Pole, the suggested energetic connection that would exist theoretically between the North Pole of the planet and the pole star. The reason it's called the pole star is because it's the center of the dome of the sky around which all the stars revolve. And so to churn the cosmic axis keeps the universe in balance. It has a lot to do with the center of the galaxy as well. So this is the Maya Hunabku. This is also, according to Jose, paddles for spin, counter spin. It's like the Mesoamerican yin-yang. This is an Aztec warrior's shield. The motif is there, and it suggested itself to me like opposite, like a black and a white hand, like that. And when Humbert's men came to Eugene, we had sponsored him from Stargate, and so we all had breakfast together, and I told him that. And he was ahead of me. He showed me this really cute, funny way of, you know how you do a high five? Well, this was like doing that with somebody else and then doing your fingers and winding up with a pyramid. So somebody already thought it out. But as a sacred symbol, you see the center of Hunabku. The name of Hunabku is one, giver of movement and measure. It's the idea of the spin, counterspin as time and space, movement and measure. So if that was on the center of your shield, you would be in the eye of the cyclone. You would be protected. You know, a lot of the ancient warriors' shields had things like comets and lightning bolts. If you look out for them, you'll see that. The turtle, old and wise. The Aztec calendar stone, which they inherited from the Maya. The outline is that of a turtle. As you can see, a two-headed turtle. And it represents number 17 in the Mayan and Aztec calendar. It means Olin, which is at once center, and they say earthquake, but I prefer to say shift. It represents shift. And so this is the one that's important. See, this is like the turtle too, but this is the one that would be important because it reminds me of the way to link up the belt stars of Orion. Those are enormously important to the whole thing going on right now, and there's more to be revealed. But it has application to Orion. Something's happening there which has yet to be studied. I like this because, you see, it's the symbol of the earth again is the turtle, and the frog in ancient Egypt was the god the goddess Heket, who imparted the spirit into the unborn soul. So there they are heading for the sky, you know, for the sun. And this is a depiction from the book of the Papal View, the council book of the Quiche Maya. First father emerging out of a split turtle. There's something with a split turtle that has to do with the end of the last age. There's something to do with the idea of a turtle splitting that signifies the end of the last age, or the end of an era of world history. So this is, again, Jose's work. It's also, if you saw it, it's also the turtle, but I've turned it up sideways because the mystic column all works out in due time according to geometrical stuff. You see, that's what I was showing you, and it's standing on end here. So this is the mystic column. It's some sort of a rupture of plane that occurs at the end of time, a rupture of reality, some reality slippage like the first acid trip is all I can think of, you know. But it's there, and, you know, it's yet to be revealed. It's in process. So in Earth Ascending by Jose Arguelles, he's got many, many left and right brain depictions of working the numbers, working the whole schema, and it's good for a whole understanding. So it's artwork that can be understood symbolically, as well as the numerological magic of it. I mean, magic squares and numerological profundity was something that the ancients did with ease, it seemed like. So moving on real quickly, the idea of shift. Because I've been tracking this for so many years, I used to, every 5 years, I would contact the International Polar Motion Service in Japan that coordinated from various stations around the world the tracings of the polar motion of the planet, the actual rotation. So in 1910, this is the XY axis, it was moving around. You know, it's not exactly symmetrical, that's fine. And then up to 1918, you know, the center's in the middle. But something began to happen in 62 to 69, like it rolled back on itself. Nobody said anything about it. It was never in the scientific journals. 71 to 75, like inertia, planets gradually. This is the center. You see, it's moved off the XY. So they never spoke about that for 9 years. It was like an electromagnetic hiccup in the magnetic field of the planet. But then they began using different tracing motion efforts, some by satellite, some by computer. So X and Y is over here, but the orbit was relatively stable. And so by 1990, 85 to 90, it's stabilized, but it's off-center. So the planetary axis is shifting. So shift is probably not so much an event as it is a process, like a lot of other things. So that was then, and I don't know where we're at now. So here we go with reality slippage. This is a 17th century woodcut of somebody having a vision, had a breakfast of wild mushrooms, having a transpersonal experience, but it says a lot as an image, and it sort of summarizes what could come next. So this is a yin-yang. It's not exactly symmetrical, but I chose it because I liked it as a piece of art. I thought it was more interesting for a slideshow. So what I wanted to say was, anybody listen to Art Bell, Richard Hoagland? He's always talking about, what is it, physics, hyperdimensional physics. He says in a rotating sphere in hyperdimensional physics, at 19.5 degrees above and below the equator, there are vortices where energy comes into the planet or the sphere and out of the planet. So this is what I do. I follow up on those clues. So here's the equator. This is Hawaii, and this is the Fiji Basin. Now, we know that the world's greatest volcanic eruptions occur here. And in the Fiji Basin, islands are always disappearing. There's all kinds of disturbance in that area. It's tectonically very volatile. So I don't know if you're all familiar with the planetary grid. It's like the acupuncture meridians of the planet. This is from the Becker-Hagen's grid map of 1982, which was based on some of my research. So grid node 74 is the Fiji Basin. These are all dodecahedrons nested within icosahedrons. So Fiji Basin is a major grid node, which would mean Earth disturbances. And this would be Hawaii up here. So that kind of explains why those places for that function. So the keynote of all of this is lava, is Earth volcanism, and all of that. So this is a photograph of the Fiji Basin area from a long way away. The forces of nature were something that were really made sacred by ancient people, and you can see why. And here's a water spout and the electrical charge that comes off it. So that kind of thing. So what I want to say, that grid node 47 at the Fiji Basin is in fact the area that Edgar Cayce had alluded to when he said when there's activity in that area, you'll know, he just said the South Pacific, but he said when there's something happening on the opposite side of the planet, you'll know that the time has begun. Well, as early as 1960, the Caspian Sea, opposite to the Fiji Basin on the other side of the planet, for no apparent reason, the water level was dropping and boats were beached in harbors, and the water level generally dropped 3 feet. So there was some shifting in the planet at that time. So this is another depiction of the Mayan calendar stone. Right now, although the long count calendar, we are in between number 13, called Ben, which means reed, and number 20, called Ahau, which is a face with like a mouth. Ahau finalizes and completes all cycles. It's the key glyph in the system. So I'm going to show you another picture of it. This was my my brochure for the harmonic convergence, which began this time of these governing, between now and the end of the age in 2012, these are the governing Mayan glyphs. So nobody's really said what this is, but what I'm seeing, if it's called reed or ben, a reed coming up under the ground, 2 reeds coming up under the ground, going through the Earth's surface tension and coming up the other side. So it really means transformation. Not every shoot makes it past this level because the ground could be hard or whatever. So it's a time of death or transformation. That's what 13 means as an archetype. 20 is the solar mind, the mind of the sun. This is his blowgun, which he blows through to fecundate the consciousness of the planet, of people, with the divine consciousness of light. And so I have a book. It was a first-hand account by somebody who lived in the jungle with a Mayan shaman, and that was in 1982, and he said about Hathor, he said, Hathor only has his lips. He's silent right now, but very soon Hathor will begin to speak, and then you will feel his words. Well, the sun is beginning to speak. It's becoming very turbulent and active, as I said earlier. And so this is the time when the consciousness of light is permeating our consciousness. And so it is a time of great purification. Purification can be good if you're in a good space, and if you're not, then it can be very disruptive and destructive. So in the Egyptian tarot, here's Anubis, the god of death, the god of transformation. He's the master initiator of light. Thresholds between transitions from one state to the other is Anubis. This is number 13, which is usually called death, but it does mean transformation. And this is number 20 with the risen Osiris, who is supposed to be the cosmic axis, the god of judgment, the god of higher consciousness beyond the physical plane. So we're in a period now of death and judgment. This would agree with the Bible. And this is the left and the right hemisphere, the east and the west hemispheres of the planet. Hornbach's men translated this for me. There's a man escaping in a boat. There's a person in the water. There's a volcano erupting. This is the symbol Venus. They regard this as the sinking of Atlantis. So there was a ceremony that I wanted to do starting in 95 in Egypt in the Western Hemisphere, and Hornbach was going to do it Palenque in the Eastern Hemisphere, except he wrote me that he did it, but the people that were there said he didn't do it, so I did it. So talking about the SMA, this is another of my art pieces. You know what this is? The Mandelbrot Set. It's a computerized image of, it's a fractal. So at the moment when chaos meets order, that's what it looks like. So I thought that's an interesting image to superimpose over the SMA. But ultimate chaos, in chaos theory, resolves into synchronicity, okay? So no matter how bad the chaos that may be encroaching, in the big picture, it's all a healing, it's all good. But anyway, I just wanted you to see, this is another picture of such a moment between a microsecond between one state and another. Does anyone know what this is?
0.0003 seconds after the initiation of a nuclear blast, perhaps.
Well, it's the initiation. You're really right. This is the moment when energy becomes spirit in the form of energy. When matter, this is the moment when matter becomes spirit in the form of releasing energy. So, whoops, this is what it looks like in the next minute. So things can turn on a dime if we don't do it right. So we're on the hot seat of history right now. To come to the end of the cycle, this is Mithras. He's the god of contracts and primarily the god of time. So here he is coming out of the Orphic egg. Here's the egg. Here's the egg. He's holding a serpent, which is the symbol of the sky and of time, and it's within an omega symbol. The alpha is the beginning, the omega is the ending. And so here we have Capricorn, the gate of the gods where so-called high spirits come into incarnation, through the zodiac to Aquarius right now, where the current processional cycle ends. So this truly is representing the end of time. And it's an egg, you see. So this egg is sort of, I've noticed it's on its thin end. And it really is true that at the equinoxes, you can stand an egg up on its small end, and it will just balance there. I did it, and it stood up for about an hour. Only at the equinox, when the energies and the light is equal around the planet. So the idea of a point of balance is built into the symbolism there. The great mystery, it is Ra, it is Osiris. And for every cycle, there are two trees. The tree of knowledge, which this is all about, and then the tree of life. So at the beginning of the cycle, it seems to me she's going, can we have this? What do you think? And he's saying, go for it. And the serpent is saying, you can do this, you can do it. And like they did, and so that's the fall, you know. So that was the mythical beginning of this cycle. So we did go through what we call history and gain knowledge, which began with the eating of the fruit of that tree. And here we are at the end of the cycle, where the tree of life is again coming up and rising from our deep, deep mind. It's in art, it's in the world iconography that's now becoming understood. And so, going through all these years of history, we have learned the secret of life. We can inherit the tree of life if we do right with this knowledge, which is, you know, wisdom and knowledge needing to be reconnected. So with all the recombinant DNA, splicing genes, creating new life forms, I mean, there's a whole other lecture right in there, but you get my drift. Can we survive ourselves between now and 2012 is what is implied here. So tree of life, does that get it for you? And gate of fire, the initiates, this is the Egyptian form of the tree of life. It's called the Jed. So I want to accelerate, but this is the important part. This is symbolism of the center. It represents stability, continuity, and regeneration. So as we get to the end of one world cycle, the old is falling away and the stability is being lost. The new is coming online. We're gradually incorporating it, but it's not really fully integrated yet. So in between, at such times, at major transitions in your life, and certainly at the end of global world cycles like the one we're approaching, there's a gray area in between where all hell can break loose. And so to evoke the energies or understand the symbolism of the Jed in particular, it's the connection between heaven and earth. So at a time of potential earth changes, one can ritualize the ceremony of the raising of the Jed for stability, continuity, and regeneration within ourselves and for the planet. And so it's a ritual technology for this time. And so I'm really dismayed when I see all these things about the Jed being a weapon, a high tension thing. I know how it got that whole formation. It's very clever, but I won't reveal it here. It's more like there's the lesser mysteries and the greater mysteries. And if you do reveal the greater mysteries when somebody doesn't know about anything, you could tell them the secret of the universe and they go, okay. So it's nice when you have a little background and then you do some work and then when it reveals itself. So Teilhard de Chardin, the great Christian mystic, he had said, at times of a universal distress, at times of great crisis, and when there's no place to stand, archetypes of wholeness arise from the deep mind. I was in a time of deep crisis. I'm saying that like, me. You've all had your own crisis, I know. But for me, because this came on like gangbusters, for me, it called me. I just couldn't, there was something there that I finally figured. And so it did reveal itself. So when you behold an archetype, you are called by it, it imprints your coding, or what should I say? Frequency codes contain data chains. there's something about the vibrational frequency of this object that lodges itself within the receptor codes of your brain, if you want to hear it that way. And so from the inside out, it does its thing for you. It becomes a part of you. And so this is being done all over the world by groups here and there. I have not found a good core group because it's a very simple ceremony to do that. But because it's so simple, it's difficult. So this is what I've been up to every spring equinox in Egypt. We do it at it was like a spiritual commando trip in '95. It was like so high adventure enough to give you a breakdown. It was archetypal and I have noticed in other things in Egypt, when I've dealt with powerful archetypes, stuff from the mythology comes into my experience. And the last time I was there, it was so traumatic. There was a guy in the group called Set, who was like the devil figure, you know, opposing Horus. And he openly confronted me. And I'm going, this is so archetypal, I can't believe it, you know. But it was traumatic. And he tried to stop the proceedings. And, I mean, he'd been a red alert from the beginning. And so there were people that said, do not be distracted, do not be distracted. We're going to do this. And it was fine. But, I mean, this sort of thing is always a confirmation that you're touching the nerve center of what was powerful and ancient. So anyway, enough said about that. And there's a whole lot more. So anyway, this just explains what the cosmic axis is about. The pole star is Polaris, and this is time-lapse. So as the dome of the sky revolves with all the stars, regardless, the pole star is always stationary, and this is above the rocks, coffee pot rocks at Sedona. You see in the middle there, that is where the pole star is. So the Jed theoretically is our backbone. It goes from the center of the earth to the pole star. And this is Osiris. He's also green because he was the god of regeneration, the eternal return of spring and the green things. He's like first father in the Maya, the barley god, the corn god. And so that's him being he's white and bound up like a mummy because he is the cosmic axis, you see, in the mythology. And he's standing on another form of Ma. This is the Sma as his backbone, and it's from a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. And there's little spin-offs. This is the Jed I've got. I had it customized when I was in Egypt. And these are just little amulets that were bound in the mummy bandages of the neck. And this is Abydos, the Temple of Seti I, 19th dynasty. And there's a whole chamber there. And there's something about it that makes me think that although they never spelled it out, they recognized it as having a counterpart in the human spine, because right here are two serpents, Kundalini. So this is the goddess Isis helping the king erect the Jed. So it was part of a ceremony when there was danger in the kingdom, they raised the Jed. When the king wanted to reestablish his strength, prowess, and fecundity as the ruler, the center which controlled the periphery and held everything in divine right order, he would raise the Jed. When there was an inauguration of a new king, they raised the Jed. So it has a history throughout Egypt for a number of reasons and a number of seasons. There's a depiction of it. A Shinto counterpart, which they would set fire to at the top. That's me after like all day long in the Cairo Museum, Jed head. But it's very tiring work, as you can tell. And this is by Paul Hamill. This is my article on the Jed. In fact, if you go to John Jenkins' website or Portal Market, you will find my article on the Jed. So somebody worked with him that had raised Jed with me in Egypt, and so Mark Hamill, who was the original Jedi in Star Wars originally, he said, for Moira, all I can say is Saha Jed. So S is the active verb, Aha means to become vertical, to become erect. So raising the Jed is done with a voice command. And we raise it as a column of light. This is a box that contains intestines, the canopic chest. So here we have it again with the two serpents. See, the Egyptians would say those are the two tutelary goddesses, the two ladies of Upper and Lower Egypt. But it also fits in with Kundalini, you see. And That's done by a sacred artist called Darlene, who was part of the original Jedi trip. Well, the Jedi are the followers and the protectors of Osiris, the Jed. So this is hyperdimensional physics again. It's a hyperdimensional sphere. I just thought it was sort of Jed-like maybe. And this is the side of a coffin where in the wood knot, the hole in the middle of the wood knot, they've put a Jed there, which is the perfect iconological, the perfect place to put it, you know. One quick thing. This was a symbol. It's a circle with a cross. At the Edfu temple, there's a place where the mysteries of Osiris have not been deciphered by Egyptologists. They don't know what to make of the hieroglyphs. So I said to the group, well, just go in and see what you get. Open yourself to it. So one woman, when we got on the boat, was showing us an image that had come into her mind. It was, it's upside down there, but it was a circle with a cross under it. So sort of like an ankh. And as she, and then I was explaining, because it's an esoteric symbol that very few people know about, but I did explain it. And the minute I said it, the sun, you know, we're under the awning, which is lashed to like a metal beam, and so like the holes in the shower curtain, you know, the awning is lashed to this metal bar through grommets, through holes. So the sun came through one of these holes in the beam where the canvas canopy is, and landed exactly on register, like it was. You see, this was a symbol of the primordial sun when it used to be Saturn, if you can believe. That's a whole other story. There are many photographs. Everybody, it was a great wonder. It was a great synchronicity. You see, there it is again, right on register. So these things are confirmations. So I said, well, what else did you get? And so what she told me, she saw the image, and then the words that she got were, you think I'd remember it? It's very simple. The words that came with the image were, behold, this time of remembrance has begun. Ignite now those memories stored. Behold now, the time of remembrance has begun. Ignite now those memories stored. That just about says it all, you know. So Egypt has many wonders, and there's many places that tour guides don't know. But if you feel the energies, you can sort of, I find places, and then I discover what they mean later. But the energy emanates in a very visceral, physical way. And I'm sorry, I'm so inefficient here. Anyway, the first jet racing trip, going out into the desert, a whole adventure, found the perfect place, wasn't sure where the perfect place was, but it couldn't have been better. It was just divinely guided, doing the thing. High noon, equinox, 1995, at the same time as the Tunben Kek of the Maya. And closing up now, this is Luxor at sunset. Often there's a full moon, and when we get there, the muezzin is calling the faithful to prayer. It's the most magical, magical time, and the air is very warm and still. And all of these photographs were taken at sunset, but they have different light quality, you know, because they were taken at different times. This is Luxor, the Nile. I just happened to be facing that monument as the sun went down. This is the evening of spring equinox 1995. We're at the top of the third pyramid, and that it was so dark that to get the picture this light, it faded out the sun, so I kind of blotted it in again there. It was sunset over the Giza Plateau. That is the hieroglyph for horizon. Sunset on the Giza Plateau from a different viewpoint. A little collage. Venus. And this is the end of the slideshow. like the cat in Alice in Wonderland that had no body, just a smile up in the tree. This is, it doesn't seem clear that this is what it is, but it was a staircase. This is down and this is up, stairs going up. It wasn't attached to a building, it was just the staircase. And when you get to the top, there's a wonderful thing. So to me, I wanted to end with this because it's the light at the end of the tunnel. So for history and for us right now, what is it, the light at the end of the tunnel? 2012, winter solstice, is the end of the Mayan calendar. And we don't know what to expect. I don't think it's an event, I think it's a process. But the image that I'm using is the winged scarab, still becoming, it's translucent by a modern artist, in its full attribute in the sky, pushing, instead of the sun, pushing the earth ascending to a new dimension, a new dispensation, a new eon of human history. And so in the big picture, there can be no doubt that the forces at work are like the shamanic dismemberment. Everything falls apart and goes to pieces, and chaos returns. So when chaos does this thing, the archetypes of wholeness, anything with a sphere, the tree of life, the connection between heaven and earth, especially the Jed, these are symbols of stability that inform the consciousness and guide our way and give us a place to stand in confusion. So all I can say is trust the process and Sahaj.
RVML Resource Center is a volunteer-operated federal 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. RVML is dedicated to providing easy access to a comprehensive collection of information on a variety of metaphysical, spiritual, and personal development subjects. RVML accepts and appreciates all donations. Material and monetary contributions are fully tax-deductible. This recording is not copyrighted, and permission is granted to broadcast, exhibit, or duplicate all or part of this program for non-commercial educational purposes. This live presentation was organized and presented by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. For more information, please visit rvml.org.